I'm Harry, and I've spent the week inside the happiness research, so you don't have to, because there's a number that gets thrown around constantly, the salary, where money supposedly stops making you happier. You've probably heard it quoted at dinner tables and in job negotiations. Here's the problem. The number people quote is American, it's out of date, and the scientists who found it have since had a very public fight about whether it's even true. So today we draw the real curve for Britain in 2026. One graph, built one study at a time, ending with an actual UK salary marked on it. By the end, you'll know where the line bends and whether your next pay rise sits before or after it. Right, here's the graph. Nothing on it yet, just two axes. Income runs along the bottom, from £0 on the left to well past £200,000 on the right. Happiness runs up the side from miserable at the floor to thriving at the ceiling. That's it. That's what we're filling in. Every study we look at today adds another piece to this line, and by the end, the whole shape will be sitting in front of us with the UK number marked on it. So let's start drawing. Point 1 goes in the year 2010. Daniel Kahneman, Nobel Prize winner, the psychologist behind Thinking Fast and Slow, teams up with the economist Angus Deaton at Princeton. They run through the Gallup daily survey of 450,000 Americans, and they ask two different questions. Question 1, how are you feeling day to day, right now, moment to moment? Question 2, standing back from your life as a whole, how satisfied are you with it? These sound similar. They aren't. The first is your mood this afternoon. The other is your judgment of your whole life. And when Kahneman and Deaton plotted both against income, they got two different shapes. Life satisfaction. The judgment one kept climbing with money all the way up. But day-to-day feeling, the moment-to-moment one, rose sharply as people escaped poverty, then bent, and then went flat. And the number where it went flat was $75,000. That's the famous plateau. That's the fact that got copied into every dinner party conversation for the next decade. Money buys life evaluation forever, but it stops buying you a better Tuesday afternoon at $75,000 a year. So on our graph, I'm drawing a line that rises steeply from the origin, curves, and then goes flat somewhere around the middle. Bend at $75,000, then dead flat. That's where the curve sat for 11 years. And then somebody came along and told everyone the line was drawn wrong. Point 2, 2021. Matthew Killingsworth at the University of Pennsylvania publishes a paper that basically says, I don't think that plateau is real. And the reason he thinks that is because he collected the data differently. Kahneman and Deaton had asked people a yes or no question at the end of the day. Killingsworth used a smartphone app called Track Your Happiness that pinged people at random moments and asked them to rate how they felt right then, on a sliding scale from very bad to very good. Better data, more of it, more precise. He runs it against income for over 33,000 US adults, and the plateau vanishes. The line just keeps going up. Now, here's where I have to explain. One word, because it matters for the shape of the line. Killingsworth found that happiness rises with what economists call log income. All it means is this. Every doubling of your salary buys you the same size bump in happiness. Going from 20,000 pounds to 40,000 pounds feels like the same jump upward as going from 40,000 pounds to 80,000. And going from 80,000 pounds to 160,000 pounds feels like the same jump again. Same bump, but you're doubling the money each time to get it. So the line rises fast on the left and then gets shallower, but it never goes flat. It keeps climbing. So I rub out the plateau I just drew, and I redraw the line as a long, gentle curve that never quite levels off. Money keeps helping. Forever, just less dramatically per pound. So now you've got a mess. You've got Kahneman saying it plateaus at $75,000. You've got Killingsworth saying it doesn't plateau at all. Both are respected researchers. Both used real data. And this is where science does something science almost never does. Which brings us to point 3. And this is my favorite part of the story because it's not a study, it's a fight. In 2022, Kahneman writes to Killingsworth and proposes what's called an adversarial collaboration, meaning Instead of publishing sniping papers at each other for the next decade, let's sit down together, pool both datasets, agree on the methods in advance, and see whose curve is right. They bring in a third researcher, Barbara Mellers, to referee the process. The paper comes out in 2023 in the journal PNS, and the answer is they were both partly right, but in a way neither of them saw coming. Here's what happened. When they broke the population down by baseline happiness level, meaning, are you an already cheerful person, an average person, or somebody who's genuinely struggling, the line looked completely different for each group. For the top 70% or so, the cheerful and the average people, Killingsworth's picture was correct. Their happiness kept rising with income indefinitely. No plateau. Every doubling of income bought them another bump. But for the least happy 20% of the population, people carrying real depression, real chronic problems, real bad situations, Kahneman's picture was correct. Their unhappiness dropped as income rose, but only up to a threshold, and past that threshold, more money did nothing for them. The number for that flattening point in 2023 US dollars was about $100,000. So the graph now has two lines on it, not one. One line, the majority line, rises smoothly and keeps rising. The other line, the unhappy minority line, rises steeply from the bottom, then bends and goes flat at a specific point. Both are on the same graph, and that flat point on the second line is the number we came here to find. That's the salary where money stops helping, but only for the people it was helping most. If you're already fine, more money keeps making you a bit happier. No ceiling in sight. If you're struggling, more money reliably lifts you out of the worst of it, right up until it can't anymore. All right, now we translate this to Britain. And I want to do this carefully, because most of the versions floating around online get this bit wrong. The $100,000 figure from the 2023 paper is in 2023 US dollars. But the underlying data was collected in the years around 29 and 2020, and the original Kahneman number was 2010. So there are two conversions to do, and you have to do them in the right order, or the answer is nonsense. First, inflation. $75,000 in 2010 US dollars is worth roughly $115,000 in 22,006 US dollars. That's straight US CPI over 16 years. Second, currency. At the 2026 average of about $1.35 to the pound, that $115,000 lands at somewhere around 85,000 pounds. But raw exchange rates lie because a pound doesn't buy the same basket of stuff in London that a dollar buys in Chicago. The OECD Purchasing Power Parity Adjustment pulls the UK figure down a bit, because a lot of American living costs, from healthcare to childcare to housing in productive cities, run higher than the UK equivalents. Adjust for that and you land in a range, not a point. The honest answer is somewhere between £75,000 and £85,000 a year. In 2026, UK money for an individual. I want to be clear about what that range actually is. It is not a magic threshold. It is the point on the graph where, for the unhappiest, 1 in 5 Britons, additional pounds appear to stop buying additional relief. For the other 4 in 5, the line keeps climbing past it, just more slowly per pound the higher you go. And when you cross-check that against ONS personal well-being data, the UK's own survey, which has been tracking life satisfaction, happiness, worthwhile, and anxiety since 2011, the shape lines up. Well-being in Britain climbs with income across the bottom of the distribution, keeps climbing more gently through the middle, and shows the sharpest drop-off in the direction of anxiety at the bottom, not a spike in happiness at the top. That's the same curve. Different survey, different country. Same shape. Now, what is money actually buying below the bend, and what changes above it? Below the bend, money is buying the removal of specific problems. Rent that eats less of your paycheck, a car that doesn't die on you, a dentist appointment you don't have to postpone, childcare that doesn't collapse when the nursery raises fees, the freedom to say no to a shift that clashes with something that matters. All of that is measurable, all of that shows up in the data, and all of that is the reason the line rises so steeply in the first place. Money below the bend is buying you back your Tuesday afternoon. It's clearing obstacles. above the bend, though. What money starts buying is different in kind. It's buying status, comparison, positional goods, a house that's a bit bigger than your neighbor's, a car that signals a bit more, the holiday that photographs a bit better. And the problem with those goods is they only work relative to what everyone else in your reference group has. So the moment your income rises, your reference group tends to rise with it, and the goods stop delivering. That's the mechanism behind the flattening for the group it flattens for. You're not buying happiness anymore, you're buying rank. And rank is a treadmill. The caveats, quick, because they matter. First, London. Living costs inside the M25 are dramatically higher than the UK average, and every honest estimate needs a London weighting on top. The £75,000 to £85,000 range is a national figure. In London, the same purchasing power lands closer to £100,000 to £115,000, because rent alone chews a bigger hole in the paycheck. Second, individual versus household. The research measures individual income against individual happiness. But in real life, happiness runs at the household level. Two people earning £45,000 each are in a very different position from one person earning £90,000 with a dependent partner and 2 kids. Third, and this is the honest limit of what the research can say, none of this is causal at the individual level. It's a pattern across large populations. It cannot tell you what your specific next pay rise will do to your specific Tuesday afternoon. It can only tell you the shape of the average curve. So here's the final line, and here's where I mark the UK number on the graph. For the majority, roughly 4 in 5 Britons, happiness keeps rising with income indefinitely, but every doubling delivers a smaller and smaller bump. £40,000 to £80,000 does more work than £80,000 to £160,000, and both do more work per pound than anything above that. For the minority, the roughly 1 in 5 who are struggling, the meaningful flattening point sits at around £75,000 to £85,000 outside London, closer to £100,000 to £115 inside it. That's the mark. That's the number the whole video was built around. And here's the practical read, which is the whole point of doing this properly. If you're below the bend, chasing the next pay rise is doing more for you than any amount of mindset advice or gratitude journal is going to. The maths is on your side. Money buys the removal of problems, and problems are what make Tuesday afternoons hard. If you're at or approaching the bend, the maths is starting to work against you. Not because money stops mattering, but because each additional pound is buying less per pound than the last one did, and the goods it's buying start shifting from problem removal to status. And if you're already well past the bend, the honest read from the research is that the next pay rise is probably not what's going to move the dial on how you actually feel on a Wednesday morning. Something else will. And figuring out what that something else is the interesting question. The curve, drawn correctly for Britain in 2026, is telling you which of those 3 you're in. And that's the only number that actually matters.